Okay, good morning again, everybody. I now call to order the Water Environment Services Budget Committee. Will the members of this committee please introduce themselves? I will start with my right.
Yes, good morning. I'm Commissioner Mark Scholl.
I'm Commissioner Ben West, Acting Vice Chair.
I'm County Commissioner Martha Schrader.
Good morning, Clackamas County Commissioner Paul Savas.
Okay, thank you for that. I will now open.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Gifford.
Oh, no, yeah.
Good morning, I'm William Gifford, member of the Advisory Committee for WES.
And Carol Breik, Budget Committee member.
And you have two public members online.
Okay.
Tony, would you introduce them, and then would they introduce themselves?
Mr. Bowker?
Hi, good morning. Christopher Bowker. I sit on the West Advisory Committee and the Budget Committee as well.
Mr. Schulman?
Good morning, Neil Schulman. I sit on the Advisory Committee and the Budget Committee and represent the North Clackamas Watersheds Council.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for those introductions and for your service. I will now open the floor for nominations for chair.
I nominate William Gifford as chair.
Do we have a second?
I second.
William Gifford has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Clerk, would you please call the poll for us?
Mr. Schulman?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Mr. Gifford?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Ms. Brick? Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Mr. Bowker?
Aye.
Vice Chair West?
Aye.
Chair, the result is 8-0.
I will now pass the gavel over to the newly elected chair. The meeting is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to open the floor for nominations for secretary. Got to be somebody on Zoom.
I nominate Carol Brick as secretary.
I'll second.
Okay, so Carol Brick has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bowker?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Mr. Schulman?
Aye.
Ms. Brick?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Gifford?
Aye.
Chair, the result is 8-0.
So the result of 8-0, Carol Brick has been elected secretary. I now ask Greg Geist, Director of Water and Environment Services, to represent the budget message, or to present the budget message.
Thank you, William. Good morning, Budget Committee members, and thank you for being here today. That's a little loud. Unfortunately, Mayor McGriff was unable to join us, and I'm here today with Aaron Blue, our WES's Finance Manager, and Ron Wieringa, the WES Deputy Director. And thanks to Aaron's awesome work, I have my own script, so I'll be reading that now. Over the past few years, with the board's support, we've engaged in extensive planning to ensure the sustainability and reliability of our services. The proposed budget is the culmination of those planning efforts. Earlier this year, the board adopted an ambitious capital improvement plan underpinned by more than 5 years of master planning work. The CIP anticipates $260 million in capital expenditures over the next 5 years to meet the challenges posed by aging infrastructure and community growth. Based on the adopted budget, the budget funds necessary capital investment and based on the adopted CIP, the budget funds necessary capital investment and adheres to the objectives of WES's long-range financial strategy to maintain 24/7 system reliability, provide services in the most cost-effective manner, and keep rate increases reasonable and predictable. As you'll hear today, despite continued inflationary pressure on operating and capital costs, due to our extensive planning efforts, strong financial position, and operating budget control, the rate increases in this year's budget are exactly what we projected they would be 2 years ago. The theme of today's presentation is simple. We made a plan, we have a plan, we're working the plan, and no surprises. So looking at the first department budget summary, if you look up in the yellow column, as you can see in the bright yellow columns on the slide, WES receives no general fund support. As a not-for-profit government utility, WES relies on service rates and charges to fund our operations. Going down to the bottom of the total budget column, WES's total proposed budget is a decrease of 4%, or about $13 million from our current year's budget. Wastewater treatment, collection, and surface water management are infrastructure-intensive activities, and capital outlay is typically the most significant expense in WES's budget. The board adopted an updated 5-year CIP in February of this year, and the changes in WES's total budget is primarily due to a decrease in construction and system development reserves related to the planned spending of almost $80 million on capital projects in the adopted CIP. The $80 million budget for capital outlay is needed to replace aging infrastructure and accommodate service district growth. Excuse me. The remainder of WES's budget supports 24/7 operations of WES's wastewater and surface water services. Trends that you're going to be seeing across all funds: capital costs and related contingencies are increasing, reserves are decreasing, service charge revenues are increasing related to growth and proposed rate increases. Other revenue resources are increasing related to higher interest rates, which we've heard. Operating costs are increasing, but no more than the 5% maximum target in our long-range financial plan. If you go down to the bottom right, we are not proposing any new or additional positions in this budget. Next slide. Our sanitary sewer operating fund, if you look at the top line, you'll see a minus 29% in beginning fund balance. That represents the transfer to construction fund. Moving down to charges, fees, and permits, third line, top left. The sanitary sewer operating fund accounts for all of WES's wastewater operating and maintenance expenses. The primary resource is monthly service charges, which are budgeted to increase as a result of continuing growth in the service area, and a proposed 5% increase to rates in alignment with our long-range financial plan and advisory committee guidance. The rate increases are outlined for each of WES's service on page 19 of the budget document, if you want to take a look at that. Most households in our service area would see an increase of $1.20 per month, or $14.40 per year. WES uses a revenue requirement approach to rate making, which just means we charge the least amount required to meet projected needs. The proposed rate increases are needed to cover increased operating costs and provide funding for the projects in WES's board-adopted CIP. Moving down to about midway down, materials and services there on the left. We continue to face inflationary pressures that affect our operating cost, particularly in utilities, chemicals, and labor. To manage these pressures, staff prioritized expenditures for one-time initiatives and made reductions in non-essential items. We are actively working to control energy costs by producing some of the energy that WES needed for WES's plants, utilizing biogas engines. The 2 biogas engines have the potential to offset up to 40% of annual plant electricity use, as well as reducing our energy consumption through participation in the Strategic Energy Management Program. Staff have already achieved a 4% reduction in energy use at Kellogg and 5% reduction at Tri-City by making operational changes at those facilities, which is a significant amount of reduction for a large industrial facility like that. These combined measures are part of a broader strategy to keep annual operating cost increases at or below a maximum of 5%, as outlined, again, in our long-range financial plan. Next slide. Okay, on to our sewer SDC fund. The Sanitary System Development Charge, or SDC, funds primarily resources fund's primary resource is SDC fees for new connections to Wes's sewer system. Under Oregon law, these resources may only be used for capital enhancing or capacity enhancing capital projects and related debt service. Capital outlay in this fund represents expenditures for projects that support growth and new development, including the Tri-City Outfall, Clackamas Interceptor, and Willamette Pump Station, and Force Main. If you look at charges, fees, and permits, third line down on the left, budgeted SDCs are based on the assumption of a 1% area growth from a population forecast completed in December of 2022. Development activity, particularly single-family residential, has slowed down in the current year, leading to reduced SDC revenue projected for this year, but activity expected to resume next fiscal year. The proposed rate increase for the SDC fee is 2.7%, which is an inflationary adjustment only based on the Engineering News Records Construction Cost Index for 2023. The SDC rate history for the last 5 years as proposed SDC rate amounts are outlined at the bottom of page 21 in the budget document. And then if you go down to capital outlay, a little more than halfway down on the left, to take advantage of historically low interest rates, Wes issued $40 million of debt in 2021, and for the last 3 years, the proceeds from this debt have been used for capital outlay in the construction fund, with a plan to realize the SDC eligibility of those capital projects through payments on the SDC eligible portion of the debt. The debt proceeds will be fully spent within the next few months. As a result, we'll be utilizing SDC reserves, as I mentioned at the beginning, for a portion of next year's capital spending, which accounts for the almost $12 million increase in capital outlay. Okay, debt service. Top line, you'll see it's down, the beginning fund balance is down 48%. It's a $3.3 million decrease in beginning fund balance due to spend down of the premium from the Series 2021 debt in the current year. If you look at other interfund transfers, a few more lines down from there, there's a 44% increase or $4 million increase in transfers. This results relying on transfers from operating and SDC fund rather than the Series 2021 premiums. Wes uses debt in the form of revenue obligations and state revolving fund loans to finance capital projects. As mentioned, the last debt was issued in 2021. The proceeds from the issuance are being used for various capital projects, outfall, liquids expansion, Three Creeks, et cetera. Okay, moving on, sewer construction fund, second line down, federal, state, and all other gifts. There's a $2 million EPA grant that you'll see there. That's a grant for federal, state, and is an EPA community grant for working on the boring facility. Wes is actively pursuing external funding like the EPA grant to reduce pressures on rates. We're always looking for money. If you move down to capital outlay, a little more than halfway down, it's the fund budgeted to increase by $13.5 million or 27%. The increase from the current year reflects indexing construction costs to August of 2023 in the adopted CIP, as well as an increase in both the number and scope of active projects. Bottom line on the left, reserves for future expenditures as illustrated in the chart and table on page 17 of the budget document. Wes has been intentionally building reserves for the last several years in anticipation of planned capital investments. The 48% reduction in reserve for future expenditures on this slide represents directing a portion of those reserves to capital projects. I've said that several times now. Next slide. Okay, now we're done with the sewer portion and on to surface water. If you look third line down, charges, fees, and permits, the Surface Water Operating Fund accounts for all of Wes's surface water management, operating, and maintenance activities essential for compliance with regulatory standards and environmental protection. Similar to the Sewer Operating Fund, the primary resource is monthly service charges, which are budgeted to increase as a result of population growth and a proposed 5% increase to Wes's surface water management rates to cover increasing operating and fund stormwater capital projects. The budget document includes monthly rate comparisons for the current year on page 28. You want to take a look at that. As you can see from the surface water rate survey on that page, the average monthly rate among neighboring jurisdictions is just under $15 per month. Wes's current surface water management rates are two of the lowest in the area, with a rate of $5.20 per month for rate zone 3 and $8.65 for rate zone 2, which is the vast majority of our customers. Even with the proposed rate increases, Wes's rates are expected to remain well below the area average. If you move down to materials and services, a little more than halfway down on the left, you'll see they're budgeted to increase 4% as a result of increased labor costs, allocated costs for central and internal services, and contracted services needed to meet regulatory requirements. Surface Water SDC Fund, there's no SDC surface water projects, not much to see here. Surface Water SDC accounts for capacity enhancing stormwater projects. There's no expenditures budgeted for this year, and the reserves will continue to grow. All right, Surface Water Construction Fund. If you look at a little more than halfway down, capital outlay, increase in capital outlay of $2 million or 87%. Reflects the continuing implementation of Stormwater Master Plan and the Stormwater Master Plan and the adopted CIP. The largest project we have going on is our $3 million for our Three Creeks restoration area. We've talked many times about that exciting project. If you look at up under the second line on the left, federal, state, local, and other gifts, the board allocated $2.4 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding to address flooding and improve water quality in the upper Kellogg Creek area. We're required to obligate the funds by the end of the calendar year and are on track to have those two projects under contract by the obligation deadline. The $471,000 budget for federal grants reflects the anticipated disbursement of these funds next year. So in summary, we're planning a significant increase in capital outlay to $79.5 million, up from $52 million from the current year. This more than 50% increase reflects our commitment to upgrading and expanding our infrastructure. Looking at reduction in reserves, WES has secured $2.6 million in grants to support next year's capital investment. The balance of funding will come from strategic use of approximately $49.2 million of reserves that we have intentionally built over the last several years in anticipation of this spending. Despite facing persistent inflationary pressures, we have managed to limit the overall increase in our materials and services budget to 4.7% or $1.5 million. This was achieved through disciplined budgeting, prioritizing the essential spending, and implementing energy-saving initiatives to offset rising costs. And finally, to align with the advisory committee guidance, long-range financial planning, we are proposing 5% rate increases for wastewater and surface water management services, 2.7% adjustments to sewer and surface water system development charges. These adjustments are crucial for covering increased costs and funding capital projects. Page 21 of the budget document contains the estimated monthly bills for each rate zone and city within WES's service area. As the table on that page shows, the monthly impact to households ranges from $0 for Milwaukee and Johnson City residents to $2.50 for customers in unincorporated rate zone 1. The majority of households WES serves are in unincorporated area of rate zone 2 and would see an increase of the bill of $1.20 per month or $14.40 per year. To close, staff presented the budget to the WES Advisory Committee for their review on Thursday, May 16th, and those in attendance unanimously recommended approval of the budget as proposed. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Greg. Any members of the committee have any questions?
Just one question. Perhaps Ron might be the one, whoever wants to answer it, and that is the surface water project that had ARPA awards on the Thiessen-Webster area. That's partly going to, I heard some of those dollars will be spent by the end of this year, calendar year. But is that the complete project or just part of it?
Good question, Commissioner. That is what we have budgeted for next fiscal year is only parts of the project. We will roll into construction in the latter part of 2025 and into 26 when we complete those projects, and the rest of the funds will be budgeted then.
Okay. Are we at risk of losing any of the ARPA dollars by the spending deadline?
Not at present. We're working hard to get those dollars obligated and get them under a construction contract. I will, the risk that we run is some of the work is on private property. The property owners in that area in the upper Kellogg Basin are very supportive and involved in the project. That could pose an issue, though, if it's a willing landowner project, and so that's the only risk. But right now, we don't see that happening. Just wanted to flag that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'd like to open the public hearing, beginning with those present in person and then those registered on Zoom. Anyone present? I think we've exhausted that pretty much. And anyone on Zoom?
If you would like to testify on the Water Environment Services budget, please use the raise hand feature and I will call on you in the order received. Mr. Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Thank you. Tony, seeing no one who wishes to speak, I'll now close the public hearing. Oh, I don't have a gavel. Do any committee members have any further questions or comments? Hearing nothing further, I'll now entertain a motion on the budget.
I move that the Water Environment Service Budget Committee approve the budget for fiscal year 24-25 in the amount of $275,940,118, with appropriations of $184,642,106 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the Water Environment Services Budget Committee approve the budget for fiscal year 24-25 fiscal year in the amount of $275,940,118 with appropriations of $184,642,106 as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Schulman,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Mr. Bowker,
Aye.
Ms. Brick,
Aye.
Vice Chair West,
Aye.
Chair Gifford.
Aye.
Chair, the result is 8-0.
The result of 8-0 is the motion passes. Any further business before this committee? Hearing none, this committee is adjourned.